Welcome back to another episode of Best Pod Available. We've got another position rankings episode for you today. We're almost done with these. We're coming around the final bend here. Today we're doing linebackers, Ryan Roberts' favorite position to talk about. If you haven't done so already, go and hit that subscribe button, hit the like button on this video as well, and comment below who is your favorite linebacker in the 2026 NFL Draft. Ryan, reading off my top 10 first for linebackers. I've got Keyshawn Elliott from Arizona State at 10. Number 9, Anthony Hill Jr. from Texas. Number 8, Justin Jefferson, the other Justin Jefferson from Alabama. I almost said Minnesota. Kyle Lewis, number 7, from Pitt. Number 6, Jacob Rodriguez from Texas Tech. Number 5, Jake Golday from Cincinnati. Number 4, Josiah Trotter from Missouri. 3, C.J. Allen from Georgia. 2, Sonny Styles from Ohio State, and then Arvell Reese at number 1 from Ohio State as well. Your top 10, sir?
Yes, my top 10. Number 10, also Keyshawn Elliott from Arizona State. Number 9 is Jacob Rodriguez from Texas Tech. 8, Kyle Lewis from Pitt. 7, Jake Golday from Cincinnati. 6, I have Caleb Elarms-Orr from TCU. Number 5, we have Anthony Hill Jr. Number 4, Josiah Trotter from Missouri. C.J. Allen from Georgia at number 3. Sonny Styles from Ohio State at number 2. And also Arvell Reese from Ohio State at number 1.
All right, my attention immediately goes to two guys that one guy you have on your list, you have him quite high, that I didn't even crack my top 10.
Okay.
The guy that I have at 8 that I also really liked that didn't crack your top 10. That being Justin Jefferson, and for you, it's Caleb Elarms-Orr. I want to just quickly touch on Jefferson before we get to Elarms-Orr. Dude, I was pleasantly surprised by Justin Jefferson, man. I thought that he was a pretty fluid mover. I thought that he had very underrated instincts. I thought that he was quite downhill. I thought he took some really good pursuit angles and flowed to the football really well. I understand some of the weaknesses that come to the table for him because he's not a very big player. He was listed at 6 foot 223, and that to a degree impacts his play strength and his ability to go to war with stronger players if he's encountering blocks. But I like Justin Jefferson. What held you back on him?
It was a couple things. First and foremost, he has a very interesting background. He was a former JUCO kid that ended up at Alabama, so he took a very different path than a lot of guys typically do going to Alabama. One is the size. I thought he was just very narrow, and I honestly have some questions of just how much weight he's going to be able to put on his frame. And the games I watched, and I'm curious if we watched dissimilar games, because the games I watched, he was playing a lot in space, like a lot of overhang. And you know how I feel about the overhang guys, just in a general box in terms of the ability to process quick in tighter spaces when you're stacked. Like, it's just not incredibly translatable in terms of processing. And I just he's a good athlete. He moves well. I personally it sounds like we just have a slight difference in like the instincts. Like, his instincts didn't pop to me. I thought it was just very average. So the role combined with the lack of size compared with what I thought were just kind of generally average instincts, just nothing about him popped to me that where I got overly excited about Jefferson. Okay. I did like him more than Deontay Lawson though. So if we can agree on that.
Oh,
yes.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm glad that I think generally most people seem to be in that same boat. Elarms-Orr, though, dude, I think I understand why you like him.
I love him.
He's got the ideal prototypical build at 6'2", 234 was his combine listing. He ran really well. He is super fast. He's super explosive. He's super physical as well. Mm-hmm. One of these guys that doesn't really hesitate. He just attacks. My bit with him, though, one, feel like sometimes he overcommits to his decisions, so he's a little over-aggressive.
That's fair.
His eyes were a bit inconsistent at times, so his decision-making, he'd be out of position. One play, he'd be in perfect positioning another. And I just thought that he was a bit tight-hipped. I think that when you're really explosive, but you lack some hip fluidity, it detracts from being really quick. Mm-hmm. That was one thing that I could not wrap my head around and get excited about. I still had him pretty high in my linebacker rankings. I had him at 12. So I'm not low on him. I'm just I have some apprehension on the eyes and also for the hip fluidity.
So we talked about this a little bit the other day. I think we generally disagree on the hip fluidity. I don't think that he has tight hips. I think that he is over aggressive at times, which puts him in bad positions where it's just not easy to transition from your downhill action to trying to find your landmark and coverage and being able to redirect that way. So I do think that he is over aggressive. We agree on that. And I also do agree, just generally speaking, he's hit or miss as a processor. I agree. But everybody after Josiah Trotter, for me, is a pretty inconsistent processor. So I'm going to forgive the processing because I just thought he was a better athlete than basically anybody else that was on the list, a more explosive player, and I'm excited about the ceiling for Caleb Elam-Ramsor. So I admit that he is not a perfect prospect, but I'm buying into that profile, especially him being 234 pounds, moving the way he does. I think that he has all the physical traits, and you saw a jump from he was a Cal transfer, and you saw in 2024 there were flashes at TCU, but I think 2024 to 2025 there was a huge ascension as a player, and I'm kind of betting on there's a little bit more of a developmental track that's still there.
I'm shocked that you have Anthony Hill significantly higher than I do. Sure. I was fully expecting that we would come into this conversation, I'd have to maybe defend Anthony Hill. I don't know why that was my thought. I wasn't paying close attention to the fact that he slowly started to slide down my list as I was watching more linebackers. Dude, he's an awesome athlete. He moves really freaking well. He can be super disruptive, especially as a blitzer. I think that it's a little complicated to evaluate him because he was really good as a freshman as a blitzing pass rusher.
Yeah.
And then eventually, kind of like with Harold Perkins, who didn't make either of our lists, you have to ask him to play off ball. And very clearly, he doesn't have the natural instincts of playing linebacker throughout his high school career that he can just feel plays out and he can go find the football. I think that he is a guy who is constantly guessing. I also think that he's a player for a linebacker that I want to rely on. I don't think he's a particularly great tackler. So we've got a really good athlete here that is as raw as he could possibly be, which makes it very difficult to pinpoint what his impact could be. I still have a pretty good grade on him. I have a late third on him, so it's not like I'm completely out on him.
Yeah,
there's a starting level path, but the floor is kind of low.
So what was your hesitation on him as a tackler, if you don't mind me asking? Like, what did you not like him as a tackler?
I felt like he was either tackling way too high or he was just straight up diving at people's feet.
Okay. I do think that he generally has a lot of power in his lower half, though. So there are some plays on film where you see him come to balance and really be able to create a lot of explosiveness at the contact point, and he's a strong hitter. There's no doubt. I think I agree with the tackling a little bit too high at times, but I mean, I could also say that Sonny Styles tackles a little too high at times. Like, you know what I mean? So, like,
he finishes better.
Yeah, he does. He finishes better. That is fair to say.
He also has a reason to. Also, he's gigantic.
Right. I mean, Hill's a decently sized guy. I don't know. Either way, we're not talking Styles too much right now. I think that his center of gravity can be a little bit better. He can play with better pad level as a tackler. That's fine. I think that again after like number 4, and even you can even include Josiah Trotter in this conversation. There's imperfect players, and you have to kind of bet on traits a little bit. And again, this is a little bet on Anthony Hill, and it's also betting on every one of the players from 5 down are very dependent, in my opinion, on where they're going to land and the style of defense that they're going to play in. If Anthony Hill Jr. goes to a defense that is just going to ask him to be super aggressive downhill, not have a ton of coverage responsibilities, but just be that guy that can kind of play that role to play short, intermediate zones, and then to be able to come up and just be an aggressive style blitzer, I think that he has upside. So I'm not in love with Anthony Hill Jr. by any stretch of the imagination, but I do think that he is a very interesting athlete to bet on if you use him in a specific role.
Why don't you like Jacob Rodriguez?
I don't think there's anything about Jacob Rodriguez that gets me excited. I know that he has become the darling in this class. The darling in this class. I get it. He forced 1 million fumbles. He was a Heisman finalist. Tested better than people thought. But that is one of the things that I think that people don't talk about enough in this conversation with Jacob Rodriguez, Joe, is that everybody was so looking forward to seeing how he tested because everyone had athleticism concerns with him. Everybody did when watching film. And then he goes and he tests, and then everyone's like, oh man, he's a good athlete too. And it's like, bro, no, that's not how that works. If you had athleticism concerns on film, it doesn't matter if he tested well. It doesn't. It has to show up on film. He's not a big linebacker. He's not an overly athletic linebacker, in my opinion. I think that his eyes are like very hit or miss. So like, I understand that people love him. He's got the mustache, Texas Tech, cowboy collar, like whatever, all this stuff. They love Jacob Rodriguez. I get it. I'm missing it with Jacob Rodriguez. I think he's a solid player. I do not think that, and he's going to go top 50. And some people are going to come back to this channel and be like, you were wrong about Jacob Rodriguez. Well, also, that's not how evaluation works. Tell me I'm wrong in 2 or 3 years, depending on how he's doing in the NFL. The draft slot does not determine if someone is right or wrong on a prospect. I just kind of want to put that in the universe. There was just nothing about him that excited me, Joe. There was just minimal that excited me.
Look, I have the advantage here of I did not watch him until after the NFL Combine.
Yeah.
So my opinion was not one direction and hoping that he tested well in order to vindicate my opinion on him. I personally thought that he is a better athlete that you are giving him credit for.
How good of an athlete, though?
Think that
How good of an athlete? How good of an athlete?
I think that it's reflected in his change of direction numbers. The fact that he moves really fluidly. He changes direction and he plants and cuts and bursts out of those cuts really well. He's obviously not. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that he would be a 1% athlete. He'd be a top 5 athlete at linebacker in the NFL. I'm not trying to paint that picture. But I think he's a plus athlete enough that he can be a starting caliber linebacker. I see a guy that can play with a lot of range. I think that he's got pretty good range between the tackles to flow downhill, to transition if he needs to cut and plant and just go. I think that Jacob Rodriguez, his success this year was derived more from that, which I wasn't expecting. I was fully expecting to step into watching his film and being disappointed that he is a average athlete at best that took advantage of being in the right place at the right time. I think his instincts are also better than you're giving him credit for. I think to force as many turnovers as he did is a testament to
be
who
careful
he is
in the turnover thing. Be careful in the turnover thing because those things can be those things. Okay,
I'm not putting him saying that this is some elite disruptor who is incredible at turning games, because he did end up in some situations where he was at the right place at the right time. But I think that it goes to show that he is always near the football because he is a player who is decisive and aggressive and he attacks. The one thing for me that I have some pause on is the play strength. I just think that you talked about his size a little bit. He was listed at 231. He was 6'1", which isn't small, but it's not super big for a guy that's going to be playing I guess he'd probably be better off as a will. I don't know if I'd like him at his size as a Mike, but I don't think that he finishes as well as he could through ball carriers because he doesn't have that true play strength. And then I also think that it impacts his ability to get off of blocks as well. So if there's a reason why he struggles, I think it has more to do with the play strength stuff and him being on the leaner side than it does because of his athletic profile.
I guess a couple quick points is one, he's number 9 in the deepest linebacker group that I can personally remember. So this is not disparaging him to say this guy can't play at all, right? You said you think that he could start. I also think that he could start in the NFL. I just don't think he's a top 50 player like some people are reflecting right now. Like I don't see that world where I don't think that he is going to return the value on being drafted in the top 50. Joe, there's a chance that he goes top 32. Like there is a chance that he goes in the back end of the first round, and like at that point, it's
do you believe that?
Yes, I do. I do.
Okay, I'll ask you off air. What's motivating that? Because I don't want you to.
No. It's not even. Look, dude. I've talked to several people around the NFL, and I know that there were a couple teams that are extremely high on him. I also know that Dane Brugler put him at number 40 on his big board, and obviously we know that Dane Brugler is very hooked into the NFL intel and all that type of stuff. He knows where guys have him on their boards and everything like that. So if you are in that spot, you are a shouting distance away from going top 32. And there are some linebacker needy teams in the first round outside of teams that can get Arvell Reese and Sonny Styles and maybe a CJ Allen. So I think that there's a possibility that he could be the third linebacker off the board. He actually, I don't know if you saw this one, but in The Beast, you should all go read The Beast, by the way, because Dane Brugler is the best in the business over there at The Athletic. Joe, he had number 40 was Jacob Rodriguez, number 46 was CJ Allen. So to put this into context, we are positioning Jacob Rodriguez as a collective to potentially be a borderline first-round pick. Like, we're doing that right now, and that's where the valuation does not meet the evaluation, in my opinion. I liked Jacob Rodriguez, but nothing about him excited me, where I would say that's a top 50 pick. That's my pause with Jacob Rodriguez.
All right, not to stick too far on Rodriguez here. I want to talk about Josiah Trotter, who, funny enough, you and I had him. Actually, you and I have identical top fours. Mm-hmm. I'm double checking that I got our lists correct. Yeah, we have identical top fours. Who would have thought that something like that would have happened? We would have agreed this much. Dude, I really like Josiah Trotter. Mm-hmm. He's another guy that doesn't have fantastic play strength, but I think it's requisite enough that he'll be able to survive. But this is one of these guys that should be acknowledged as a plug-and-play linebacker. He is very aggressive. He's decisive. He's got good instincts. He's always near the football. Yeah, moves really well. He's got really good burst out of his cuts. And I think that despite maybe not having like plus play strength, he's pretty physical. This is a guy who checks every single box and I think should be considered to be one of the day two linebackers for if your team needs a starting linebacker, draft him. If there's a Giants guy, I want to see Josiah Trotter next to Tremaine Edmonds if they don't end up drafting Sonny Styles theoretically. I think that would be a perfect pick.
So I would argue, Joe, that Josiah Trotter might be the best linebacker in this class in terms of downhill trigger, physicality, working blockers, getting off blocks, and remaining square to the line of scrimmage to always be in a solid tackling position. Like, I would argue that he is number one, if not number two. Like, he is tremendous at those things. As a pure run defender, he's ready to go today. Like, he can come into the NFL and he can start for a team as an inside linebacker and stop the run at a good level and potentially a very good level down the road. The biggest hang-up, which is, what's so funny? You remember when Jeremiah Trotter Jr. came out, and I did not like Jeremiah Trotter Jr. at all as a football player.
They're so different. They couldn't be any more different.
So different. Funny enough, is Josiah Trotter is more like Jeremiah Trotter Sr. than Jeremiah Trotter Jr. is. You know what I mean? Like, really physical downhill players. The problem with Josiah, which is probably going to limit him a little bit as an all-around player, brother, he's a pretty, I don't want to say horrible. Horrible is not a nice word. He is a well below average pass defender. Like, he is not very good at coverage at all.
Well, if he's my team starting Will, like, do I really need him to be a tremendous player in space and coverage? Is that something that I really need out of him?
I'm having a hard time deciphering if he has zero instincts in coverage or if he's just so over aggressive as a run defender that he just doesn't prioritize pass defense as much in their system. I don't know which one it is. All I know is spatial awareness is not there. He is very late to transition from run defender to pass coverage guy. So, like, you're just not going to get a lot of him in pass coverage, especially early on in his NFL career. So this is probably more of a 1 to 2 down player early on. Depending on how well he eventually develops as a pass coverage player is going to determine just how good he's going to be as an overall player. But I know that he is going to be a very good run defending inside linebacker early on, which is the number one job, obviously, of a linebacker.
I would rather have a linebacker who is incredibly aggressive that maybe it leads to problems in other avenues. So to what you said, he's really aggressive run defender. Maybe that impacts his instincts. One of the things that I always love to bring up that my special teams coordinator in college always emphasized to us was, if you're going to make a mistake, make it at 100 miles an hour. If you're going to be a player who is going to have an error on the field, it is better to just attack and to commit to that decision than it is to be indecisive and just be piddling around mid-play and you don't, where am I going to go? What am I going to do? So I think that you can rein back and teach him and have his instincts improve in pass coverage because everything else works. All the athleticism works. So I like what Josiah Trotter establishes here. CJ Allen has been the forgotten about linebacker in this class. I know that not literally. He has maybe not carried that same hype and projection that he did in the first round in the summer.
Right.
I wonder if maybe he's one of these players that slides out of the first round and then just goes on to have a ridiculously good career. He is everything you want in an inside linebacker. And I do think that he's got some versatility to play either Will or to play Mike because of his profile. He has fantastic play strength that he generates a lot of force to be able to work against blockers, to be able to finish through ball carriers. He's got the best instincts out of any of these linebackers. He's just always there. You think that the play is going in one direction. He already knew where the play was going to be and where he needs to meet a ball carrier. The one thing that just hurts him, Ryan, is he's a little bit stumpy. He doesn't have great length. And the fact that his change of direction isn't ridiculously good. It could be a little bit better, but he feels like a player that is going to be ridiculously impactful for wherever he goes.
Yeah, Joe, CJ kind of conflicts me a little bit just because I don't think that he necessarily took the ascension that we thought he would in the preseason where he thought maybe he could be like a top 20 draft pick. I think that he kind of more stagnated a little bit just because he was banged up at the beginning of the season and took a little while to kind of get his legs back and all that type of stuff. But he is still a quality linebacker on the NFL level, in my opinion, a potential plus linebacker on the NFL level. But I do think, and I agree with your sentiment, that I think there's a bigger possibility that he falls out of the first round than maybe what we once thought was going to be a reality, right? Like, it would not be shocked for me if he's in the 40s rather than being in the top 25 of this draft. I think that we are overthinking him to a degree, especially after, like, people overanalyzed his, like, pass coverage stuff at his pro day and whatnot, even though that's like never been CJ's biggest strengths. His strength, like Josiah Trotter, getting downhill, instincts, impact in the run game. I still really like CJ Allen for what he is. I just don't necessarily think that he took that next step in 2025.
Sonny Styles has been one of the most entertaining players to track. I think it was last year's class when I watched him in the summer. I felt like I was really early on Sonny Styles, and I'm not trying to do the bit like, I called it. I recall that I had a higher grade on him, and I had a late first-round grade on him, and you were not fully there yet. And part of our discussion was he was a converted defensive back. It was a safety that was transitioning to linebacker, and you still saw that there was a feeling out for him. But the athleticism was there. This is a dude who is gigantic. Ridiculous athlete, flies all over the field. My pro comp for him is a pterodactyl, and I keep bringing that up. He covers so much range because of his length and because of his speed and his burst out of his cuts. A guy who can accelerate as quickly as he can from a immobile when he's just coming from his base. Like, I think that stuff is really, really, truly special, even if his instincts weren't fully there. But the thing that made him ridiculous this year, and it was a big step for him and Arvell Reese in Matt Patricia's defense, was that he was starting to just play reactively, that he was just letting the game come to him. And I think that is what took Sonny Styles into this rare category. It's not a hot take at this point to suggest that he's worth a top 5 pick. Top 3 pick, I think, should even be in the discussion. In a year where there is really not very many premier prospects, having a game-changing linebacker like this in your defense, a one-of-one linebacker at a position where it's hard to come by these guys, you need to take that swing. And I think that Sonny Styles is just going to be transformative, whether it's for the Jets, it's for the Cardinals, maybe it is for the Giants, and they want to go with 2 gigantic linebackers. There's just so much to buy into with Sonny Styles.
Hey, Joe, content idea? You need to put out a draft guide where you just compare prospects to dinosaurs. That's what needs to happen. We have a pterodactyl. We have a T-Rex in this class as well that we've talked about. There's a lot of dinos in this class, man. I obviously say in jest, and that was a little bit of a dad joke for people out there that aren't dads. Look, man, we see this all the time with the safety to linebacker conversion stuff. Everyone's just kind of always like, oh, you're oversized for a safety and you're not great in pass coverage. Let's put you on the second level. And for some guys, it's a transition that can happen. For others, we have seen that it's just not a transition that makes any sense. I think of like Ray Armstrong as one that was like not a good transition, because ultimately when you're playing from depth, you do have more time to read and react. You have more time. You're working for more space. At linebacker, things happen so effing fast, man. Like, if you are one tick of a second off that you are out of a play, you're in the wrong run lane, you are out of position, ultimately, for just one bad guess. And I think that in 2024, we saw some of that with Sonny Styles. Like, he was a great athlete. He was a willing player in the run game, obviously, but I thought he was a tick slow a little bit too often, right? 2025, it was a much different story. It was clearly a time where he was figuring it out. The game was definitely slowing down for him, and he was processing at a very fast speed in 2025, which is why he was rarely out of position, which is why he missed a single tackle all season. So he was in position and he was finishing plays, and plus, he at 6'5". Also, how did he go from 6'4" and 3/8 in the summer to 6'5"? We haven't talked about that much, but like that is a crazy jump of like physical profile. But at 6'5", 240 plus pounds, to move the way he does and run in the 4.4s, to have a 43.5-inch vert, whatever the heck it was, this kid's a great athlete, and the game is continuously slowing down for him, which means these Fred Warner comps that I continue seeing on the timeline, they hold some validity, man, because Fred Warner is a rare player with his ability to transition from run game to a pass coverage perspective. Sonny Styles, with the profile he brings to the table, has that same type of upside.
And Fred Warner is not as big as Sonny Styles is, so it's like if we made Fred Warner taller and longer, we would end up creating the most dangerous linebacker in the NFL. There's some special stuff that we could talk about here for what Sonny Styles. We don't really talk a ton of ceiling and projection, but I don't think it's outlandish to say if Sonny Styles hits, this isn't you draft him early and he ends up being a real good linebacker in your defense. No, you draft him and he becomes an all-pro on a consistent basis. He becomes one of the best linebackers over the course of the next 10 years, and then we're just saying, did you see what Sonny Styles did this week? Or, oh man, Sonny Styles isn't in the lineup. How is this team going to survive without him? He's going to be that type of a player if he ends up coming to fruition for his potential.
Well, and Fred Warner's a fun comp because if you're drafting a linebacker in the top 5, you kind of need him to be like that type of transcendent player because linebackers don't go that early. But also, I know you probably don't remember too much at BYU, Joe, but like Fred Warner played overhang at BYU. Like, he was a space player at BYU, and he was another guy who was like, he's obviously a physically talented dude, but what is he like reading and reacting on the second level? And obviously he made that transition very cleanly for the San Francisco 49ers as he developed into a future Hall of Famer, more than likely. So it's a big comp, but I do think there's a lot of parallels to their game and makes a lot of sense. And yeah, I agree. I think that Styles can be a game changer in the right defense, in pass coverage, in run defense. I even think he has some upside as a blitzer as well. Like, this is a very versatile weapon on the second level.
Arvell Reese, we have to have the discussion here to close out. Not about who he is not about his potential, but about who he is, because there has been a constant mischaracterization about Arvell Reese to the point where people were overreacting to how he looked doing bag drills, showing off his bend. Mm-hmm. Notice how we didn't even bring up. You took the time to bring up players that you graded at multiple positions. We didn't bring up him playing edge because he's not an edge player. He is an outside linebacker, and he's one of the most gifted outside linebacker prospects that does very rare things that has come out in some time. When we talk about Sonny Styles being a rare prospect, it's very different than with Arvell Reese, because what Arvell Reese does isn't seen across the NFL. And there's a very clearly translatable role for him because what he just did was in an NFL defense run by Matt Patricia. He is not somebody that I am lining up, and I'm a little fearful that someone stupid's going to draft him and go, Arvell, you're going to be our edge rusher, or they're going to just purely put him in the box and not get creative with him with tormenting opposing offensive lines. Where he wins, you drop him at edge one play, you drop him in front of a guard another play, you put him in the A gap up on top of a center. He's too quick for any of those guys to keep up with. You don't know where he's coming from. Maybe he drops into coverage. He ends up doing a coffee house blitz. Nobody's expecting know what he's going to do because he is just that disruptive and he's that explosive. You have to constantly worry about where he is. But where the mischaracterization comes into play, his instincts as a linebacker are better than his prowess as a potential pass rusher. And the fact that he can do both things at a very high level and he can play off ball makes him worth the second overall pick. I think that Arvell Reese has been one of the most overanalyzed prospects over the past couple of weeks. We've spent more time overanalyzing Arvell Reese than we have Ruben Bain, which is insane to me. A lot of people make excuses for Ruben Bain. A lot of people are tearing down Arvell Reese. I'm tired of it. Arvell Reese is a freaking dude. They both are good football players, but Arvell Reese is a rare freaking athlete.
So the Reese stuff has made me laugh because, to your point, like we saw the bag drills at his pro day where people were clowning on him, but then you see him like a week or two later when he's working with Brandon Jordan and he looks a lot better already because it's something that he's literally never had to do before. Like people lose the sight of that is that like, yes, a guy that's never done a drill before is not great at that drill to start. Like obviously he would have to learn on the job to be a pass rusher. He has to develop if that is the role that you see of him. I also disagree, and this is my biggest point of emphasis. There is this opinion out there that Arvell Reese is a boomer bust prospect. And I would say, if you just think he's just an edge rusher, then I agree he's a boomer bust prospect because you have no idea what he is as an edge. I agree. As a linebacker, he is not a boomer bust prospect. He's a physical, good processor who doesn't miss tackles. Like he's a starting linebacker today if you wanted him to be. Like starting linebacker. He's got great fits, great physicality, good eyes. I don't understand what our inconsistency with him is as a linebacker, which is why I still think he's a linebacker. I do. But I am fully open, Joe, that there's going to be a feel to use the versatility aspect of his game, which I think a smart defensive coordinator would be very smart to do, which is why I like to fit with the New York Jets at number 2. Not because the Jets are a great run organization or any of that type of stuff. It's because the Jets apparently are going to run a whole lot of 3-4 this year. And for me, this kid, if used properly, could be LeVar Arrington as a football player. A guy that can play on the second level, can play stacked, and can do a lot of in obvious pass situation, can rush the passer, and also could rush from different spots and different alignments. He doesn't have to just be on the end man on the line of scrimmage. He could be a guy that can blitz through A, B gaps, a guy that blitzes from the second level. Like he can do a lot of unique things, which makes him such a talented football player. But yes, I would like the overanalyzation of him as a linebacker to stop. My guy is a very good linebacker prospect who I think has upside to be a great linebacker on the next level. And I also think that you can mix and match some rush potential. But I know that I'm an outlier to some people in the NFL. I don't view him as an edge. Like I don't view him as a pure edge. I think he's a guy that can do some edge things at times. But this is a linebacker that has incredible and rare versatility that he brings to the table.
Comment below. Who is your favorite linebacker in this class? Hit the like button and subscribe. We'll be back with our next rankings episode.